Good morning, class. Let's continue with the chapter Law and Social Justice. So, children, if we are to understand the events that led to the Bhopal disaster, we have to ask, why did Union Carbide set up its plant in India? Why did the American company turned up to India to set up? So the one reason for the foreign companies coming to India is the cheap labor, that they get labor at low prices here in our country. Wages that the companies pay to workers, say in USA, are far higher than what they have to pay to the workers in poorer countries like India. And for lower pay, companies can get longer hours of work. Additional expenses such as housing facilities for workers are also fewer. Thus, companies, in the urge of earning higher profits and saving their costs, they turn up to India. Cost cutting can also be done by other more dangerous means. Lower working conditions, including lower safety measures, are used as ways of cutting cost. Like in UC plant, every safety device was malfunctioned, as was in short supply. Between 1980 to 1984, the work crew for the MIC plant was cut in half from 12 to 6 workers. The period of safety training for workers were brought down from 6 months to 15 days, and the post of night shift worker for the MIC plant was abolished. Read the following comparison between UC's safety system in Bhopal and its other plant in the USA. At West Virginia, USA, computerized warning and monitoring systems were in place, whereas UC plant in Bhopal relied on manual gauges and human senses to detect the gas leak. At the West Virginia plants, emergency evacuation plans were in place but not existed in the situation of Bhopal. There are such sharp differences in the safety standard across the countries. And even after the disaster happened, why was the compensation to the victims so low? One part of the answer lies in what is perceived as the worth of an Indian worker. What do we consider as the value of an Indian worker? One worker can easily replace another. Since there is so much unemployment, there are many workers who are willing to work in unsafe conditions just in return of salaries. Making use of workers' vulnerability, employers ignore safety in workplaces. Thus, even so many years after the Bhopal gas tragedy, there are regular reports of accidents in construction sites, factories, and only due to the careless attitude of the employers. So, as the lawmakers and the enforcers, the government is supposed to ensure that safety laws are implemented. It is the duty of the government to ensure that the right to life guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution is not violated by anyone. Then, what was the government doing when there was such blatant violations of the safety standards in UC plant? The reasons are, first, the safety laws in India were very weak, and secondly, even these weak safety rules were not enforced. Government officers, they refused to recognize that the plant was hazardous and allowed it to come up in populated locality. When some officials in Bhopal objected that installation of MIC production unit in 1978 was a safety violation, the position of the government was that the state needs the continued investment of the Bhopal plant, which provided jobs. It was unthinkable, according to them, to ask UC to shift to cleaner technology or safer procedures. Government inspectors continued to approve the procedures in the plant, and even when repeated incidents of leak from the plant made it obvious to everybody that things were seriously wrong. This, as you know, is contrary to what the role of a law-making and enforcement agency should be. Instead of protecting the interest of people, their safety was being disregarded both by the government and the private companies. This is obviously not at all desirable. With more industries being set up both by local and foreign businesses in India, there is a great need for stronger laws to protect the workers' right and enforce these laws in the country. In 1984, children, there were very few laws protecting the environment in India, and there was hardly any enforcement of these laws. The environment was treated as a free entity कि हमें free में कुछ मिला हुआ है और industries could pollute the air and water without any restrictions, whether it was our rivers, it was our airs, it was groundwater, everything was polluted and the health of the people was disregarded. Thus, not only was UC a beneficiary of the lower safety standards, it did not have to spend any money to clean up the pollution. In USA, this is the necessary part of the production process, that it is the responsibility of the factory owner to clean all the left up things. But in India, they did not even bother to clean up the pollution. The Bhopal disaster brought the issue of environment to forefront. Several thousands of people who were not associated with the factory in any way were greatly affected because of the poisonous gas leaked from the plant. This made people realize that the existing laws, through weak, only covered the individual worker and not the persons who might be injured due to these accidents. And in response to this pressure from environmental activists and others in the years after the Bhopal gas tragedy, the Indian government they made new laws. Henceforth, the polluter was to be held accountable for the damage done to the environment. Like you see, they did not took any step to accept their mistake. The new laws made responsibility of the polluter for the any damage caused. The environment is something that people over generations will share and it could not be destroyed by these industrial developments. The court also gave number of judgments upholding the right to a healthy environment as intrinsic to the fundamental right to life. In Subhash Kumar versus State of Bihar 1991, the Supreme Court held that right to life is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution and it includes the right of the enjoyment of pollution-free water and for full enjoyment of life. The government is responsible for setting up laws and procedures then to check up pollution, clean rivers and introduce heavy fines for those who polluted. So in conclusion, what I could say to you people is that laws are very necessary in any situations, whether it be market, office, factory, anything. Laws are very, very important. Private companies, contractors, business persons, in order to make high profits, they turn to unfair practices like paying lower wages, employing children for work, ignoring the conditions of work, ignoring the damage to the environment, and so many different things. A major role of the government, therefore, is to control the activities of these private companies by making, enforcing, and upholding laws so as to prevent unfair practices and ensure social justice within the country. This means that the government has to make appropriate laws and also has to enforce the laws. Laws that are weak and poorly enforced can cause serious harm, as we have seen in the case of Bhopal gas tragedy. While the government has a leading role in this aspect, people can exert pressure so that both private and the government act in the interest of the society. Environment, as we saw in one example where people have pushed a public cause, the court have upheld the right to healthy environment. In this chapter, we argued that people now must demand that with this facility of healthy environment should be extended to all. Likewise, workers' right in an area where the situation is still very unfair. People must demand stronger laws protecting workers' interests so that right to life is achieved by every citizen of the country.